Life has a funny way of surprising you. At 16, 17, I thought I had my entire life planned out. College, my career, independence, my condo in, you know, upper Manhattan. I had it thought out until a whole new path was placed in front of me and created in front of me. And suddenly, everything, my plans, my life, me included, changed. Welcome back to a legendary mess. I am Ray Martine. And cousins, I missed you guys. I really, really did. I really truly hope you guys had a really blessed week. I did. I'm just learning to rest in the valley. Cause boy oh boy, it's been a week. But before I get into this story, I have a messy confession, which is a new segment that I'm introducing this episode. I have a messy, messy confession. It's not super messy, but it's messy enough for me. I was having a messy confession moment when it came about. So, since this podcast journey has started, I wasn't looking for anything. I was not thinking this was going to be super duper impactful to anybody. But God has definitely showed up and showed out here and there. And He's still building and He's still moving and He's still working. Thank you, God. All the praises go to you first and foremost, because this podcast surely would not exist if He hadn't told me to do it. So, um, talking with my younger sister Jamie, which there will be a series. There will be a series with her. Talking with her, she was saying she was so proud of me, and I was like, "For doing what?" I'm oblivious to certain things, guys. There's gonna be a lot of that coming, but I'm oblivious to certain things. She was like, "I'm really proud of you. I'm so proud of you using your voice. I'm so proud of you just not crashing out." And I was like, "Girl, what you mean crashing out?" And she slapped me with reality. She was like, "You're a parent's crash out, kid." And as much as I was gonna argue her about it, she slapped me with examples. Like the times I would leave cheerleading practice to go to piece somebody up who was bothering her or bullying her, or the time she and I had got into it and she ended up with stitches on her forehead. She has a scar. Don't ask. That'll be a whole different story time. Um, or how, or how there was a few not so very great moments of my crashing out where I had to devise plans to, like, if we had to go in a biblical sense, defeat the enemy. If you're going with reality and street sense, I was out here devising a plan on how I was going to one up the ops. Okay? I brag. Since we're all on the same page. The messy confession is all of those fights that I had ever been in, 3 of them were only mine. I don't know how to feel about that. But I did realize I am my parents' crash out kid. I'm not too proud of all of them. Some I'm okay with, but some of them I'm not too proud of. But I've learned to forgive myself, and I'm praying that none of my kids, even though I have an idea of who are my crash out children, I pray they're not anywhere nearly as bad as I was. Yep, there's messy confession for the week. But anywho, we're gonna get back. We're gonna get into it. We're gonna get into it. Today I really wanted to talk about what happens when life does not go as you had planned it, and how the unexpected can lead to some of the best and greatest blessings of your life. So we're gonna run it back to 14, 15-year-old me, constantly in and out of the doctors because I was going through an extreme I was going through extreme periods. Yeah. And my mom had been taking me to multiple different doctors. We finally settled on the one who I've been with since I was literally 15. That man is a saint. I'm not giving him his name. I'm not going to say his name out here. That is not for y'all. But the ones who know. My OBGYN, he's a beast. That man delivered my kids. I trust that man with my life. I really, truly do. Um, and so it goes. We finally got to this man, and you know what happened? He properly diagnosed me. At 15, I was diagnosed with moderate to severe endometriosis, which explained why my periods were super extreme, why I was struggling to like function as a female during my time in a month, and it explained a lot of other things that were happening to me with that. I was diagnosed at 15, and part of me wasn't as sad as I thought I was going to be. I was like, okay, I'm not going to have that one perfect child, and I'm okay with that. And I now have to just focus on the things that I can kind of sort of control, which was college, because I was excited to go to an HBCU or a university. I was super excited about all these things, so I was sitting and working on it. And here's the doozy. I got into a relationship that I like to call the very longest trial subscription period of my entire life. And it wasn't a very good relationship. I'm very honest about these things. It was not a very good relationship. There was a lot of concern. There was a lot of chaos. There was a lot of misery. And it was actually a domestic violence one. And that will be a whole separate story time. But that person, I really don't have any words for him except God bless him, because he almost took me out and my beautiful twin of a child out, but God bless him. I hope he gets himself together. So I got into a relationship with that man. I was trying to get out of it, actually, truth be told. After like after a while, I was just like, yeah, this isn't for me. It wasn't as toxic as it started to become after I had found out I was pregnant. So now I got into this relationship, and that summer that I'm supposed to be preparing for college, um, that did not happen. it, I ended up feeling really sick. I'm going through some pregnancy symptoms, not enough to determine if I was. And when my time in a month would normally come, I used to just feel sick naturally. Like I would already feel nauseous. I would be throwing up. I was already kind of like prepared to be laid out. But I this particular time I only spotted a little. So I'm not thinking nothing of it. It wasn't until it just did not show up. After a while, it didn't show up. And at that point, I was like, yeah, something's not right, and I need to get this checked out. As fast as I was thinking, I need to get it checked out, a very good friend of mine was like, I think you're pregnant, and I think you need to pee on a stick. I was like, I think the heck not. I think absolutely not. You must be smoking something because I can't get pregnant. And disclaimer clause and side note, no, that does not mean I was outside wilding. We literally had protection. But I'm safely starting to realize I think there might have been holes in that poked by the other person, because I'm just gonna leave it as that. I'm not gonna say all the other stuff that I would like to say, but yeah. So um I'm I, because of my disbelief, I was like, yeah, whatever. I don't think so. So I peed on a bunch of them. They all came out negative. So I didn't think nothing of it. I'm like, maybe it's an endometriosis. Maybe it's my endo. Maybe I need to go and see what's happening. Now, at this point, I eventually went to the ER without telling my mom, without telling my dad. I went to the ER and I had them do a pregnancy test. It still came back negative. Still, I was going through a very long list of negatives. Finally, after a while, I guess my mom and my grandmother caught on to what was going on with me, and they made me pee on the stick. It still came out negative. I promise you, came out negative. Finally, we budged. I'm like, we need to just go to the doctors. Um, and before we went to the doctors, something said rain pee on the stick. I peed on the stick. That one came out positive, and the way that I was in my bathroom doing everything but praying and panicking, I done cried. I done sat in the shower with my clothes on. I was going through it. Gonna be honest, I was going through it. So the appointment comes, and my mother, I adore her. The appointment comes, and we get into the room with my doctor, and he's like, "All right, let's run these tests." He does a blood test. He does two different blood tests. He makes me pee. He does. He goes through. He goes through it very thoroughly. As fast as he goes through it thoroughly, he goes like, "Yeah, you're pregnant. Like, you're definitely pregnant." And the way that I sat, my mom and my daughter's father in the room, and I just kind of sat there like, "Oh, like for real?" And I was like, "Ain't no." In my head, I'm kind of like, "Ain't no way that's nah." It's got to be inaccurate. I know he's a great doctor, but test be wrong." And he was like, "Come on, we're gonna, it looks like you're about 7 or 8 weeks." And I was like, "Ain't no way, he lying." So at this point, he does the sonogram. He does an ultrasound, and I see my daughter in the very corner. I do have a picture of it somewhere. Maybe I'll insert it, maybe not. I'll ask her permission first. 9 times out of 10, I'm probably not gonna insert it because she's probably gonna be like, "No, please put that on the internet." She right. She right. I'm gonna protect her first. Um, but she gives me permission. I'll put the little sonogram picture. Um, so she is in the corner. And at first I couldn't see nothing. I mean, like nothing. Glasses on and everything. And I'm like, I don't see anything. And the doctor goes right here, and in the corner is this little jelly bean. And I hear my mother go, "Lord, go get the Pepsi and vodka and all the Tylenol and Advil you can get me." Her father, on the other hand, that man burst into tears. Burst into tears. He's like hysterical crying in the corner of the office. And all three of us, my doctor, my mother, and I, we all look over real slow and we're like, "You're joking, right?" He's like doing the most, okay? Doing the most. And at that point, I was just like, "Oh, like she's up in there." We go home and I tell my grandmother, and I'm just like, "Grandma, I don't know. This ain't it. I'm not supposed to have kids." And she's sitting with me at the kitchen table and she's like, "Who said that?" I said, "The doctor. Science did." And she goes, "But God didn't." I said, "God would knock me up at 17?" And she goes, "No. But sit down and talk to him. Figure this out." And I said, "Okay. I heard you." And before I, went to go have a moment or a few with God Himself, she was like, "Whatever happens, we got your back." My grandmother and my mom were definitely like, "Yo, whatever happens, we got your back." And it wasn't that it was comforting. It kind of made me teary eyed because I was like, "All right, okay, let's see what happens." So all the while that I am in a space where I'm just thinking, I'm struggling a little bit with my own thoughts, I'm talking to God. And at that point, He wasn't exactly answering me. He was very silent. And until I had one night fallen asleep, and my late mother was in the dream holding a baby. And I was like, I know you lying. Whose kid is that? And she came with the message. She goes, you know, my granddaughter is going to be beautiful. I said, lady, first of all, what? And two, who sent you? You don't show up unless something's happening. Like, am I in danger? Um, and she just kept saying, my granddaughter is going to be beautiful. You're going to be fine. And I had no clue on how I was going to explain this to, like my parents, my, my mom and my grandmother, my dad. I had no clue how I was going to explain this. I ended up at my dad's house, and I wanted to look at some pictures of my mom, because at that point she just was sitting on my spirit really heavy and on my brain. As I'm looking, and I'm like, I don't understand. And as fast as I didn't understand, my dad pulls me aside. He goes, I know you're pregnant. And I was like, is it that obvious? He's like, your whole face, your face, your face don't never clear up. You always got some type of acne. Your face is clearer than clear. Your nose looked like Michael Jackson's, just extra big. And I had no choice but to laugh. And I was like, Dad, I'm terrified. I remember telling him, I was like, I'm scared. Like, what am I going to do? And he was like, have you? Now, my dad, who at some point kind of did not have a relationship with God anymore, at that particular space, um, he said, did you pray? Did you talk to God? Like, have you sat? And I said, yeah, but I feel like he's not answering me. He said, well, how do you figure? I said, I mean, I didn't hear him say anything to me. He hasn't sent me a sign. All I got was mommy popping up in my dream talking about my granddaughter going to be beautiful. And he said, it's okay. We're not going to, I'm going to hold your hand when I say this, darling, but that might have been your sign. So that night I go home back to my mom's house, and I pretty much was like, God, if that is you sending my mother to talk to me, can you send her again? Promise y'all, hands to God himself, because that man works intentionally, sometimes mysteriously, and even more funnily. He sends my mother back to me in a dream, and she's holding a little pink blanket with a baby in it. And I was like, oh, what you doing here? Again, me with this, what you doing here? And she's like, this baby is gonna be so precious, and she's excited. I'm like, girl, you already have a granddaughter. Like, what the crap is going on here? Man, I'm like, what's going on here? You already have a granddaughter. You have Ari, my niece, my firstborn niece on my mother's side. And I'm like, you already have. I'm like, are you like trying to like send me a message? Like, what's going on? And she's like, she's just gonna be, she's gonna do great. She's gonna just change everything. And I'm like, why are you excited about this? What's wrong with you? I'm supposed to be going to college. I woke up from that dream, and I immediately called my grandmother, and I'm talking to her, and I'm like, Grandma, my mother showed up in a dream. I'm not scared. I'm just wondering. She showed up twice, and she had a baby in her arms. And I don't know how to take that. And she's like, maybe God is telling you you're going to be okay, whatever you decide or whatever you choose. But your answer is somewhere amongst that. And all the while that I'm kind of panicking, I finally had to like break the news. Because at that point, something just said, just break the news. Like, you're pregnant. It is what it is. So I did. And it was met with a lot of, I want to say conflict, but it was a lot of adversities. There was a lot of negative feedback. At some point, certain people, and they know who they are. I'm not airing y'all out. Because some of y'all years later, like, spoke and apologized behind it. And I forgave y'all even way back when. It was all right. But some people pulled up to my house demanding that I had an abortion, like right then and there. And still to this day, it will always irritate me. I even had some very nasty emails about how my child was going to grow up like special needs and everything else in the book. And I found myself back in the room. Found myself back in my room crying. I'm tearing up now, but I'm gonna get through it. I'm a soldier. Um, I found myself back in my room crying, like not a regular like. I mean, like the snot-filled, you know, tears, and all the while that I'm like distraught. My younger brother Tariq, who I love to death, this, and he's a character. I love him. Um, he comes and he comes. He just hears me like brawling. Then he comes in the room. He's like, "You good?" I'm like, "No, absolutely not." So I'm like, I'm pregnant and I'm just unsure. And, ooh, okay, it's a coming. The tears. Sorry, y'all. Anything that comes to these kids, I will cry over. I'm soft now. I don't know what happened. I used to be a soldier. I used to be tough. I don't know what happened. But my brother comes in the room and he's like, nice. He's not mad. He doesn't think nothing. He's like, nice. What you gonna do? I'm like, I don't know. He's like, well, what's the worst thing that'll happen if you have this child? And I'm like, no college. I have to deal with like criticism, and I know I'm just gonna be unsupported. And he's like, who told you that? I'm like, I don't know. He's like, well, I just want to tell you, if you decide to have the little baby or whatever it is, a nugget, whatever you want to call it, I'll be a dope uncle. I'm crying again. Forgive me, y'all. But he was like somewhere like he wasn't. He had to be like around 10. I want to say around 10. I could be wrong. Because it's been 17 years, literally, almost 17 years. But he was still a child, like a child. He wasn't even a teenager yet, and that was just so sweet of him. Because he didn't have to say that. He didn't. He could have just been like, well, oh well. And he's just sitting there next to me, like, it's okay. Like, hey, like, it happened. Like, what do you want to do? Like, I'm gonna be a great uncle if you choose to keep the little person. And I was just like, how is he seeing so much of the silver lining that I'm missing? So after a while, I finally had made the decision to be a parent. And it came because, one, after sitting with God and just talking, he kept sending my mother in a dream. It stopped being irritating when she kept popping up and she was like, you're gonna be fine. Um, and sitting in favorite, um, one of my very, um, favorite scriptures is in Proverbs, trust in the Lord and not lean on your own understanding. And that's what I was doing. And I knew I was going to be met with so much criticism and so much negative talk. It did not, in my head, I was like, maybe God is blessing me with something that He trusts me with. And it took so long for me to really like grasp it. So I then had to give up my scholarships. I had to give up college, the dream of like, oh, well, I'm going to have this perfect like life of college, career, my condo or my high-rise apartment in Manhattan with possibly an adopted child at some point. I had all of this figured out, and then just that fast, it changed. And despite how my pregnancy went, it was very stressful. It was very miserable. It was very lonely due to certain circumstances. But I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world because the minute I got to meet and hold my daughter, the first thing I could think of was everything that I didn't have, the simplicity of all the things that I didn't have, you will have. You will have a mom who is going to smother you with love. You're going to have a grandmother who loves you unconditionally. You're going to have a great grandmother who is going to smother you with love and all these things. And the minute that I was holding her, after a whole lot of hours that I couldn't hold her, because my labor went, it was all right for a little bit, and then it went straight to, I don't know what, but it went straight to the depths, okay? But I'm grateful that I made it out, and so did she. Um, I just remember holding her and telling her everything that I lacked. In the simplest ways, I will see to it that you have it. I don't care how I gotta get it to you, you will have it. And the simplest things that I lacked was a community of love growing up, and me and my siblings. And if I'm being totally transparent, we lacked a certain stability, we lacked a certain support, we lacked a certain we lacked a certain structure of love, and I wanted that for her so bad. I did. I wanted it for her so bad. So it made giving up college, those scholarships and everything worth it. And I would do it again. I don't know if it would be with the same person, but probably because it taught me how strong I was and how protective I am as a parent. And every last adversity, every negative thing that was said to me, every all of that made it just was in disguise a blessing because she's here. She'll be 17 in a few weeks. I'm utterly there's never a moment that I'm not filled with gratitude. There's never a moment that I look at all four of those kids and I think like, wow, God, you trusted me with them. Sometimes I'd be frustrated with them and I'd be going through it because I was so young having to start my motherhood. But when I think about it, they are really my favorite people in the world. I mean, and I really mean that. Like, I don't, when people ask me if I'm bored on a Saturday night, I'm not, because I have them. And I'm happy to spend all the time in the world with them because I know what it's like not having your parent be there to spend that allotted time with you. Um, but the minute my plans went completely out the window, as much as it was so scary, it was also equally exciting because it was like, all right, I was already told these things and God trusts me and he's using me for a testimony. What else does he have in store for me? And I just was like, all right, I'm going to step on nothing but blind faith and surrender what I know is not for me to handle and give it to God. And he really showed up and showed out. And he, with my first and eldest daughter, gave me such a blessing. All of my kids are blessings. But with Azaria, who, let me make this clear, her name technically came from the Bible, Azariah. I took the H off and pronounced it so it would sound more girly because it sounded too rough for me. But her name is Azaria from Azariah, actually, which means God has helped. And he did. He navigated us both in such a uncertain season that I felt the loneliest in, that I felt so distraught a bit in, that I just had nothing but him and blind faith. And I'm grateful that he chose me to be not just her parent, but Joshua, Angeli, and Audra Rose's parent. And yes, the girls all have A names. They also all share the same middle name except the boy. And all their names came out of the Bible except Rosie. She was named by Azaria, who wanted to connect all three of them with her, and she came home with this book called "Where You Going, Audra Rose." It's still being sold, I promise. But looking back, if I had to tell my younger self anything, I would tell her, you are going to be completely changed by this experience. You're going to be made new. And God's going to be walking with you hand in hand, even when you might think He's not. He's got you. You have support in the most unlikely places. You're going to be fine. And I'm just grateful that I stepped out on blind faith, because I'm still amazed that God trusted me with four of them. I don't even know. There's a lot of days I wake up and I'm winging it, winging it. But He trusts me, and I'm just so grateful that my my plans were uprooted the way that they were. Because now that I think about it, I would have crashed out in college. I'm 100% aware I would have crashed out. And I'm grateful that God just saw something different for me and was like, let me change that up so you don't take a path that is not for you. And although a lot of the relatives that felt super strongly about me being a parent at that age, some apologize, some still like to hold it against me. But all in all, I don't sit with that type of malice. I I forgave y'all. It's nothing that I don't really think I need to make a public announcement about it. But if y'all end up watching this episode, I forgave y'all. I forgave y'all years ago, because I want to teach those kids so much better than what we were taught, obviously. But yeah, I am filled with nothing but gratitude when it comes to them. I'm filled with a lot of love and gratitude, because God really thought I was capable. The crash out queen. He thought I was capable, and he thought I was qualified. He saw me as qualified to take on something that I was 100% told was never going to happen for me, and wouldn't happen for me, but it did. And the very thing that obviously scared me, which was being a parent, um, because I didn't want to fail. That was something that I always struggled with. I didn't want to fail her or myself, but he literally still uses me as an example for that, and I'm 100% always and utterly grateful. So, in this legendary mess, even though I cried a little, don't judge me neither. Them kids will them kids soften me up a whole lot. I'm grateful. But when have you guys ever thought you had it complete your life 100% figured out and it got uprooted? How did you guys deal with it? And not I'm very aware not everybody's going to deal with it the way that I dealt with it. So, you know what that means? It's a call to action. Share. Find me on Instagram. Maybe I'll get verified because they playing with me, all. But find me on Instagram. Find me on Facebook. Find me on TikTok, because I be on there. I be wilding y'all. Just a smidge. Just a smidge. But y'all know where to find me. Instagram, I am Ray Martine, or a Legendary Master page. You can comment in the comment section, obviously. You can also find me on Facebook. It's still a love hate relationship there. But you can DM me. At some point, I will definitely want to hear how you guys handled it. And you can send in your messy confessions, because messy confessions are always good for the soul. Right in here. But yeah, TikTok is obviously my name, Ray Martine. Um, yeah, you guys look me up, hit me up, tell me exactly how your life went from A to C, because B was somewhere where you thought you had it together and it just magically disappeared. But y'all know I love y'all cousins, but God loves you guys more. And we are always, always going to give ourselves grace. The way that God gives us grace, give yourself a lot of grace. I'm still, as a parent, learning to give myself grace, because sometimes I be getting tried and I find myself ready to take somebody's head clean off their shoulders, but I have to surrender and give them grace. So give yourselves grace. Please give yourselves grace. I cannot stress this enough. Give yourselves grace. Don't beat yourself up about any decisions that you feel like you might have missed out on or anything like that. Give yourselves grace. Forgive yourselves if you have to. It's a process, but forgive yourselves if you have not done that yet. And please, I beg of you guys, stay safe. Please stay safe. And remember, there's nobody like you in the world. You are your own legendary mess. And with that, I am signing off. Again, I'm Ray Martine. This is a legendary mess.